Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios, brought to you by our official sponsor, the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author, Mia Molson Zia Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson Zia, double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by a sweet psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on a life of David, including 30 exquisite paintings, King David Psalms, and more. Check out the Sweet Psalmist today, Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner, and the Sensei Swaying Eric Diamond's latest release, All of Me, featuring new music, title track, and more. New music coming soon. EricDiamondMusic.com. Follow on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and more. We'll hear the terrific gentleman who's a multi-talented film, TV producer, writer, and script editor of Los Angeles. He's a founder and CEO of Costard and Touchstone Productions. He began his podcast company, whose mission is to make the world a better place through storytelling, recognized by Entertainment Weekly as Best Film Podcast of 22. For one of his podcasts, he's got not one, not two, not three, but 4 of them. I think this is going to blow many people away, including mine. He's also done a lot of movies like, if you remember, Tales from the Crypt, The Outer Limits, and also Children of the Corn, Freddy's Nightmares. You're going to recognize this gentleman. Live, ladies and gentlemen, Plus Studios, beautiful downtown Los Angeles, the amazing multi-talented film, TV producer, writer, and script editor of Tales from the Crypt, The Outer Limits, Freddy's Nightmare, Children of the Corn, and he's got all his podcasts, multi-talent, Alan Katz. Alan, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Wherever we both are, Mike, it is a pleasure to be here, there, or everywhere.
That's right. And it's great 24/7, 365. That's why I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I did not steal it from Jim Carrey. I got tired of saying, good morning. It's actually good afternoon. It's 24/7. That's a great thing. So you're a multi-talented film, TV producer, writer, script editor out of Los Angeles. You're founder CEO of Costard and Touchstone Productions. You also began your podcast company, whose mission is to make the world a better place through storytelling, and to recognized by Entertainment Weekly as Best Film Podcast of 22 for How Not to Make a Movie. Plus, you also other podcasts, The Hall Closet. You also got Susie Wellness, Sage Wellness Within, and also
Sage Wellness.
Yes, that's right. And also The Donor, a DNA horror story. And for those who are fans of Tales of the Crypt, The Outer Limits, also Children of the Corn, Freddy's Nightmares, this guy right here has been behind everything. Before getting on, Alan, tell us how you first got started.
I have been writing professionally since I was 16, but I kind of took writing for granted. It was just something I always was able to do. I wanted to be an actor. And when I went to college, I went to a place called Vassar. Excuse me. When I went to Vassar, I thought I was going to be an actor. And when I graduated from Vassar, I went to one audition, and I was not prepared for it. I think I was probably terrible, but I walked out of the audition and I thought, oh, I'm not, what kind of an idiot does this for a living? I'm going to go be a writer instead. An even bigger idiot. It was the only other skill that I had. And like I said, I've been writing professionally since I was 16, getting paid for my typing. I had a friend from school who'd become an agent at William Morris in Los Angeles. Okay. Now, I was in New York after college. I was in New York. I was looking to get into the theater. I was writing little plays, and I had a friend who would entice me into, hey, let's try to write a screenplay together. So we had written a screenplay, and my friend Carol had said, hey, have you written any screenplays? She said, send one to me. And I sent it to her. And she said, this is pretty good. You should come out and meet and greet people. So in June of 1985, I flew from New York to LA. Now, I was at that point a burgeoning New Yorker. I was an East Coaster. Los Angeles was the stupidest place on the planet. The land of the avocado head.
Avocado heads. And never heard of that one, but yeah, I'll keep that in mind next time.
Please do. So I got to Los Angeles, and gosh, well, in June in New York, it's hot and humid already, and smells like everything smells like urine at that particular time in New York. In LA, well, there's no humidity. It's the desert. It's warm and lovely. And back then, 40 years ago, it was a lot less crowded than it is now. And there was some traffic, but it was okay. And people were so nice to me. I strongly recommend having copious amounts of smoke blown up your ass, as I experienced. That was awesome. One night, my agent took me to a movie premiere, St. Elmo's Fire.
Oh, that was a great movie.
Yeah,
Love it, love it, love it. Breakfast Club, yes.
William Morris represented the project, and so my view of it all was backstage, and let me tell you, that was intoxicating. The very next morning, I had some time off. Someone at the after party, and boy, was that intoxicating, said you should take a drive through Topanga Canyon, which is a part of within the city limits of Los Angeles. And then it was a bit more remote and wild. And as I was driving from the freeway, from the 101 through the Santa Monica Mountains, as they plunge into the Pacific Ocean at the Pacific Coast Highway, by the time I got to the water, New York, screw New York. I was moving to Los Angeles, and LA absolutely seduced me. I really loved LA really from that first week here. And I've been trying to, it took me a while to figure out what the appeal of it is, but a big part of it is, as sunshiny bright as it is here in Los Angeles, there's a darkness to the place that outshines the light 1,000 times over. And that's the appeal of Los Angeles. There's a reason that the noir genre was created in Los Angeles. It was a bunch of writers trying to figure out, what is it about this place? It's so pretty and so corrupt at the same time. Anyway,
I believe it.
Los Angeles was great. Among the first people that I met that first week in Los Angeles was a guy named Gil Adler. And Gil became not only my best friend for a decade, but my creative partner.
Nice.
We wrote things together. Now, Gil had trained, he had come out of theater, but he trained as an accountant.
Okay.
And he was a terrific producer. He understood this basic premise: if you have $1 to make your movie, do not spend $1. You haven't got it. Now, if you can make your movie for 99 cents or 98 cents and make it look like that dollar, even better. Hey, if you could do it for 97 cents and make it look like $1 or $2, well, now you're on to something. And so Gil's, all creativity is problem solving of one kind or another. And his answer to the problem solving wasn't throw money at it, it was throw more creativity at it. Well,
and up here too, yes.
Indeed. Well, that's how I've always felt about the creative process. And so Gil and I bonded, and we had a great relationship. Well, HBO was very fond of Gil. He had produced a show for them called The Hitchhiker. And when a big ticket show of theirs called Vietnam War Stories got into trouble, they called Gil to go in and save it. It was over budget, it was over schedule, it was a mess. And Gil went in, he righted the ship, and it came in on time, on budget, and it won awards.
Nice.
A little while later, a few years later, HBO was approached. HBO had been approached by four big movie producers: Joel Silver, Richard Donner, Robert Zemeckis, and Walter Hill. Now, at this time, around 1990, movies and TV were miles and miles apart. These days, people travel back and forth between talent. I mean, by people, talent, actors, and writers, and directors go back and forth from TV to movies all the time. Back then, that did not happen. You were TV or you were movies. You were occasionally a Tom Hanks or a Robin Williams would go from TV into movies, but if you were heading from movies into TV, it meant your career was over.
Right. It was kind of like a downshift to careers and everything like that.
Yeah. So suddenly, well, HBO at that point they were basically still just movies, but they were dipping their toe into the creative original material. They had a show called First and 10 and another one called Dream On, but these are basically just single camera shows with nudity and profanity. Suddenly,
right. that was probably the cheapest way to go too. Just like the X-rated industry, just like one camera, that's it, and get by as very little
Oh,
as possible.
yeah. But they were basically they were basic TV shows. There was nothing oversized about them. Then these four mega producers, the names I just mentioned to you, approached HBO. They said, we want to put TV feature film vision inside your little TV box. And HBO went, yeah. And they struck a deal, and these four producers wanted to bring a comic book that they loved from their youth, Tales from the Crypt. Well,
Oh yes,
the EC comics, they wanted to bring the EC world to television. And HBO was excited, and the problem was that these four movie producers didn't know much about television. And there's a reason why TV gets made the way that it did and does. In order to make a profit, when you set up a TV show at a network, for instance, you get a deficit partner, because whatever the network pays the first time it shows, it's called a license fee. The first time or the second time, it's never going to pay for the cost of production. At some point, so you've got to bring somebody to pay for the actual cost of production, and to basically be the bank until you find profits. In the old days, profitability in the TV world was via syndication. Now, HBO was a subscription model, completely different, and so they didn't care about anyone having a deficit partner. So the first season of Tales from the Crypt was 6 episodes. The second season was 18 episodes. There was no deficit partner. This we'll come back to this fact. There was no one paying the actual cost of production. At the same time, in order to take a comic book and turn it into a TV show, well, you want to take all the franchise elements, the EC comic elements that they loved. How do you turn them into the TV show? How do you make every frame of the TV show feel like the comic book? Well, that takes work, and you really have to someone's got to dedicate their time to making sure that every story, because you're going to hire a bunch of different writers, but that everything feels like it's the same comic book franchise as a TV show. They didn't hire anyone to develop Tales from the Crypt and make sure to take the franchise from the comic book into the show. In the middle of the second season, there was nobody minding the store, and so really the show lost its edge. It lost its direction because they didn't know how to run a TV show. They went way in at the second season. Those 18 episodes, they went way over budget, and HBO was cash flowing the whole thing. The night before the wrap party, HBO handed the executive producers a financial statement that said, "You're $1 million cash in the hole.
Wow.
If you want your third season, pay us now." Now, for the executive producers, they'd get paid money in the third season, so it was worth a lot of money to them, and they figured they could take the $1 million out of the budget of season 3. So they got at their check. Well, first they canceled the wrap party, they fired everybody, and then they got out their checkbooks and wrote a check to HBO to cover the $1 million that they knew they were going to get back anyway. HBO, knowing it had a problem on its hands, turned to Gil, and they said, "Gil, we'd like you to come in and oversee the third and last season of Tales from the Crypt." As I was Gil's writing partner, and Gil saw the situation and said, "Well, you need a story editor. You need somebody to come aboard and take the franchise from here to there." And HBO didn't care. The partners didn't care because they didn't know how to run a TV show. And so even though I was really not qualified to run Tales from the Crypt, I got hired to run Tales from the Crypt. So my 2 jobs on Tales from the Crypt were, as I said, first of all, to make sure that every frame of the TV show was redolent of the tales from of the stuff in the comic books that the executive producers, our audience loved, that I loved, because I was a huge fan of Bill Gaines, everything that Bill Gaines did. I loved Mad Magazine.
Oh yeah, that was my favorite. What Me Worry?
That was also Bill Gaines. I loved his whole universe. All right. My other job, well, that meant that every single script had to go through me. I was the last person was going to type them any words in the script before it went to our department heads, to casting, to anyone. So I was the final word on the script. My other job was to write the Crypt Keeper segments. Now, as I said, the show never went through a development process, and they never developed the show, and they never developed the Crypt Keeper. The Crypt Keeper in the comic books is an old white guy with stringy hair.
Mm-hmm.
The executive producers wanted their own Crypt Keeper, and one day, one of the executive producers, Joel Silver, found Kevin Yeager, a special effects makeup genius, who, among other things, he created Chucky.
Yeah.
That's also a Kevin Yeager creation. And Kevin created the puppet. And then Kevin found John Kassir, who became the voice of the Crypt Keeper. But no one developed the character. No one asked the question, okay, who is he? Mm-hmm. Whoever wrote the scripts for the episode would throw some words at the Crypt Keeper, and that's what the Crypt Keeper would say. As I sat down to write Crypt Keeper segments, I bumped into the problem. How do you write for a character that doesn't exist? I don't know how you write for a cipher. And if you want the character to be funny too, well, a generic character will give you generic everything. No, can't do it. So just to do my damn job, I had to create a character for the Crypt Keeper. Now, I grew up loving old movies. I was a huge fan of the Marx Brothers. Loved.
Oh, yeah. My daughter's favorite.
Yeah.
Terrific.
So
very terrific.
I ended up turning the Crypt Keeper into my little Groucho, because it was all about wordplay. That's what the Crypt Keeper was all about, was wordplay. And I had to fill in with it. I had to give him a character and a personality, and being a writer and therefore a little bit lazy, I reached for the closest personality at hand, which was me. And I filled the Crypt Keeper with me. So though he looks like the puppet and he sounds like John Kassir, every word out of his mouth, every thought out of his head was me.
Okay.
Now, a funny thing happened over the course of that third season. As I said, it was supposed to be the last season of Tales from the Crypt. But because Gil and I, we went back to the studs in getting the franchise back into every single episode. And that reinvigorated the show to a degree. We got big stars to come back into the show, and that reinvigorated it to a degree. But it was the transformation of the Crypt Keeper from the Crypt Keeper puppet into the Crypt Keeper, the franchise character that we're talking about today. That's what really kept the series and the franchise alive. A bunch of years ago, they've been trying to remake Tales from the Crypt for a while, but it will never happen, and I'll explain why it's an absolute impossibility. The problem is that there are two separate pieces of intellectual property. M. Night Shyamalan wanted to remake Tales from the Crypt. TNT was going to do a Thursday night horror wheel, and M. Night Shyamalan optioned Tales from the Crypt. He bumped into the problem that the Crypt Keeper he got was the old white guy with stringy hair, not the Crypt Keeper.
Oh.
Two separate pieces of IP. William Gaines and his family, they owned the old white guy with stringy hair, that Crypt Keeper. The puppet is owned by the Crypt Partners.
So it had some legalistic confusion going on right there.
Well, he simply didn't get M. Night Shyamalan didn't get the Crypt Keeper he thought he was going to get. He just didn't understand that there was two different pieces of IP. And the problem is that amongst those four mega producers, Joel Silver was always the most prominent in terms of doing Crypt's business. And Joel is a huge personality, an impresario, a massive ego, and one of the biggest assholes on the planet. By a long shot. And most people, virtually everybody, gets to a point where they suddenly think life is too short to ever work with Joel Silver ever again.
Oh my gosh.
That includes Bill Gaines's family. They would never make a deal with Joel ever again. They don't trust them.
Ever. Ooh, that sounds scary.
Yeah.
Ooh, boy.
And so the Tales from the Crypt, the comic books, and the Crypt Keeper are forever divorced. Where will the children go for Christmas? I don't know.
Well, speaking of children as well, too, you did Children of the Corn. You also did The Outer Limits, Weird
Yep.
World, Frey's Nightmares, one of the favorites. To get to more of that with the amazing Alan Katz. But first, you listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios. Visit online at soundcloudstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. SoundCloud Studios is the answer. SoundCloud Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. It's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@soundcloudstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. SoundCloud Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon, paperback, and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those who love be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews and even loved and endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joy Cassidy, Forrest Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today, for it goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson-Zia, double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by the Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, including theories, quiz of pains, and King David's Psalms. The Sweet Psalmist gives new perspective of David through the Psalms he wrote, and it's the time of ship where it started, and complicate yet turbulent relationship with King Saul. It's a story of love, betrayal, repentance, hope, and more. Check out the Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner on Amazon today. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Also brought to you by Sensei Swing, Eric Diamond's latest release, All of Me, featuring the title track, I've Got a New Heartache, Bring Me Sunshine and More. Eric's a multi-award winning artist, including inducted numerous Hall of Fames, album Entertainment of the Year, and release a new CD soon. Check out the amazing Eric Diamond today, ericdiamondmusic.com. Follow on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, 40 podcast platforms. Heard in 100 countries. Take us with you on any mobile device. Follow us on Facebook, Spreaker, Spotify, YouTube, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Twitter, and more. And for great gift ideas, t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, Amazon.com. Keywords, the Mike Wagner Show. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mia Molson-Zia store. Great books, merchandise, and more. And support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're here with the amazing multi-talented film, TV producer, writer, script editor, Alan Katz here on the Mike Wagner Show. And before we talk about the one thing that you're really passionate about, some more on the lines that 13 million of us are doing right now on planet Earth. We'll get that in just a minute. You also did the Outer Limits, Weird World, Children of the Corn 2, and Freddy's Nightmares. And tell us more about that.
Freddy's, I did with Gil. Well, Gil produced the show, and I wrote several episodes with Gil. That started up during an earlier writer's strike back in, gosh, what was that? About 1987, there was a writer's strike. That was a Rubik's Cube of a TV show. It was a puzzle to put together.
Huh.
The executive producers, what New Line, Bob Shea, wanted, that every hour you could break down into 2 half hours. So again, it was an anthological show, but that each episode could play as a half hour or a full hour. So story, total full half hour story, 2 full half hour stories that also played as a full hour. Okay. The second season, it got even more complicated. They suddenly thought, hey, we could sell these as movies in Europe. So then every episode had to be 2 half-hour independent half-hour episodes that played as an hour, but also played as a part of another 2 half hours that played as an hour. That the whole thing played as 2 hours.
Oh, wow. So it's almost like a little soap opera mini series and everything like that.
It was figuring out calculus was easier than figuring out an episode of Freddy's Nightmares. But it got done, and the show looked terrific in part because I think it's a testament to Gil's strength as a producer. It was an amazing team, and a lot of the team that made Freddy's later made Crypt together.
Okay.
In particular, Greg Melton, the production designer on yeah, what he did on Freddy's was remarkable when you think about. He had to. There were no standing sets in a regular series. God, you got standing sets and regular actors with their regular wardrobes, and everyone. Yeah, you can kind of coast for a bit, but doing an anthology, every episode is completely different. There's no standing set. Every episode's completely different, and somehow, yeah, they figured out a way to get an incredible amount of wonderful, incredibly different work done in a remarkably short span of time. That was part of how we got Crypt done, was through the genius of Greg Melton.
Okay.
But working on Freddy's was fun. Writing for that particular franchise character was fun. Putting words in Freddy's mouth was a hoot. It was much more fun writing for the Crypt Keeper. Although I will say that writing for the Crypt Keeper was the hardest job I ever had, because yeah, because he could only say particular things. And, once I figured out what he was going to be doing that episode, all right, he's going to be playing golf. All right, then I'd go through an entire huge list of words, golf words, things you'd say on a golf course, you hear on a golf course, things golfers would say. And then I'd have to find a way to turn them into something how the Crypt Keeper would say them. Like he would say, that he was talking about his caddy was named Juan, and he put a hole in Juan.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
So
Hole in one. I like that.
So that was part of what I'd have to do to make every world that we possibly could, to bring the Crypt Keeper into it, and how would he explain the world in his terms. But it was like pulling organs through your nose.
Oh my goodness.
It was a
Can't
very
imagine
painful
that.
process, because the Crypt Keeper that he did. Oh, hold on, can I still hear you now? Because the Crypt Keeper succeeded the way
I'm
that
here.
he
Don't
did.
worry.
Yeah. Universal Pictures wanted us to do a bunch of feature films, and all of them had to be different. And so the first Tales from the Crypt feature film that we did was a very good movie called Demon Knight, which Ernest Dickerson directed. Billy Zane is the villain. He's wonderful. Jada Pinkett and Bill Sadler are the heroes. The whole cast is terrific. For the second Tales from the Crypt feature, which Gil was going to direct and we were writing, neither Gil nor I were horror guys. We were both comedy guys, but horror is kind of where we ended up. We didn't want the town to think of us as just one trick ponies, because that's what Hollywood does. It goes, oh, you're horror guys, that's it. Well,
it's like they pigeonhole you, stereotype, typecast, everything.
Of course.
That's like career killers right there.
Oh my God. So we saw the second Tales from the Crypt feature film as an opportunity to show the town that we could do a lot more than just horror. And we had developed a script ultimately called Dead Easy, a very different from the first movie, which was a monster movie. Dead Easy was a taut psychological thriller about a recovered memory. It took place in the swamps outside New Orleans. It had a fantastic villain, this Harlequin character. Universal Pictures, our studio, was happy with the script. We started down the production road. We spent months in pre-production. We were casting. We had a young unknown actress named Salma Hayek cast as the female lead. We were in New Orleans getting ready to start shooting the movie, and 3 weeks before the start of principal photography would have started in New Orleans, Universal called us and they said, stop, don't spend another dime, come back to Los Angeles.
Really? Oh my gosh.
We returned to LA and they said, you're not going to make that movie, you're going to make this other movie instead. And they stuck a script under our nose called Bordello of Blood. And they said,
Oh yeah.
and they said, you
Let's talk
still,
more about that instead here.
yeah, we're gonna do that. And they said, but you still start in 3 weeks, so get cracking, guys. You got to rewrite this. You got to get this movie ready to shoot. Now, where did Bordello of Blood come from? All right. At about this time, a new studio had formed called DreamWorks.
Mm-hmm.
DreamWorks was Steven Spielberg leaving his deal at Universal, not the lot. He stayed on the lot, but he left his deal to become a new studio. Well, next thing he began doing, as a new studio would have to, he began making talent deals. And Universal was desperately afraid of losing another big piece of talent. One of my executive producers, Bob Zemeckis. Bob had done, of course, Back to the Future, Forrest Gump.
And Who Framed Roger Rabbit, one of my favorites.
And Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and of course, Tales from the Crypt. Universal was desperately afraid of losing Bob, and they said, Bob, what? I don't know any other part of that deal. Obviously, it was good enough that Bob stayed. I know one deal point. Universal Pictures agreed to buy the first student script that Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale, the future Back to the Future guys, ever wrote as film school students at USC, a thing called Bordello of Blood. Okay. For $500,000. It was a deal point simply to get Bob to stay at Universal. There was no intention to ever make this student movie. But then Universal began to think, hey, wait a minute. Are we just going to eat $500,000? Bob's about to executive produce this other horror movie, this Dead Easy thing. Well, screw that. That cost, what, $50,000, that script? Plus, it will take it out of their budget. Guys, you're going to make Bordello of Blood instead. Hey, look, it's got Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale's name on it. That's bigger than Alan Katz and Gil Adler's name on a script. And so for that reason, we went from the whole creative team making a movie we had spent a year and a half developing and were incredibly devoted to, because we all saw it as a way to show the town we could do more than just horror movies. From doing a project that we were all passionately devoted to making a student movie.
Oh my gosh.
And a student movie called Bordello of Blood. I mean, this was almost an insult, a slap in the face, but what can you do? You really don't have a choice. If you walk away from Tales from the Crypt and probably ever working in this town again. So you're kind of
stuck in the middle.
And so we set forth to make a movie that literally nobody who made Bordello of Blood wanted to make. Literally nobody. And I can tell you, if you go and you get involved in any kind of enterprise of this kind with no desire to do it, do not be surprised if every day is stupider than the day before it. And that is exactly what happened. It turned into my own personal Waterloo. Hey, the problem was I took the money to produce the movie. And so even though I did not want to do it in the worst way possible, I should have been a better producer. But after Universal seemed to not care about what movie we were making, suddenly my executive producer, Joel Silver, kind of took his eye off the ball too. And he decided he wanted to cast our three leads. One of the problems with the script was that it was not possible to rewrite it into anything good. You couldn't.
Right.
Its core, one of its core problems is that the hero is a small town detective. Now ask yourself, how much business can a detective really do in a small town?
Not much.
Not much. And so really he's a non-entity. He doesn't actually exist except in the heads of film school students who don't know anything because they're just students. And so it was an impossible character to turn into anything of substance. We wanted Danny Baldwin to play the character, and he was ready to do it, but Joel insisted on casting Dennis Miller instead. And to this day, I could not tell you why he wanted Dennis Miller. Our audience wanted gore and splatter and those kinds of things. Dennis Miller was a political comedian. Nothing to do with our audience. I have no idea why Joel Silver hired him. Dennis did not want to do the movie. And Dennis said, after Joel made him, said, hey, I want you to do the movie. Dennis said, all right, I'll do it for $1 million, figuring no one in their right mind would pay Dennis Miller $1 million to be in a movie. No one had paid Dennis Miller $1 million to be in a movie before. But for some reason, Joel said yes. Well, we didn't have $1 million in our budget. We were a $12 million movie. We had $500,000 for our lead actor. We went to Universal. We said, hey, can we get some help here? A little breakage. They said, we don't, Dennis Miller is nothing to us. We don't even know why you're hiring him. And so we had to take it out of our budget. All the money in our movie was in special effects makeup, which is what our audience came to see. We took the money out of special effects makeup. We took it out of what our audience came to see to pay an actor our audience didn't give a fuck about. All right. And then, and even though we were paying him $1 million, he still didn't want to be there. Did not want to be there, and was difficult to work with every single day. I understood why Joel wanted Erica Leniak, but he was never going to get what he wanted from her. She was in a long-term relationship. And just after she agreed to do the movie, a movie called Bordello of Blood, she suddenly decided she didn't want to be that kind of actress doing this kind of movie. What? You just said yes. And so before she would get on a plane, we had already started production. She insisted on a massive rewrite before she'd get on the
Oh my gosh.
All right. So that was Erica. Now, with the villain of the piece, the villain's the most important character in a horror movie. Billy Zane is wonderful in Demon Knight. Here's the thing. I've cast, over the course of my career, lots and lots of actors. I have never in my entire life ever cast an actor for a movie or TV show to act. Acting is the last thing I ever wanted them to do, because all right, if you're going to, when they're on stage, yeah, they got to act because the people in the last row got to see and hear them. But on film or TV, there's a camera, and the camera is right in their face.
Right, exactly.
If they act, the camera will see them acting and will have to cut all that out. What I want actors to do for the camera is be as emotionally naked and honest as they possibly can be. I'll give them a different name. We'll put some words in their mouths. But at certain key moments, we need them to click these emotions on, not act them, be them. And so
be them, yeah, just like Robert De Niro marinating the part.
He has to be, it's be. Now, Billy Zane is a wonderful villain because he's an egomaniac. Yes, he's a monstrous egomaniac. Yeah, there's some dark parts to Billy, and that's why he makes a great villain. That's why he plays in Titanic. He's a great villain. He's not acting. There's darkness inside him. Okay. Stick a pin in this concept. At the time that we were making, we wanted to hire Robin Givens to be the villain in Bordello of Blood. But at the time that we were making we were about to start making Bordello, Joel was making another movie at the same time in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
A thing called Assassins with Antonio Banderas and Sylvester Stallone. And one day on the set of Assassins, Stallone walks up to Joel Silver and he says, Hey, Joel, I hear you're going to be making another movie in Vancouver. Why don't you hire my girlfriend Angie? Put her in the movie. That way we can visit each other across the border. And Joel, instead of being a responsible executive producer and saying, that's a great idea, Sly, but let me check with the guys to make sure it's okay with them. he said, that's a great idea, Sly. Period. And he committed us to hiring Sylvester Stallone's girlfriend to be the villain in our horror movie. Now, look, Angie's genuinely a wonderful human being. She's a lovely person, and she was a great supermodel. She was looking for work as an actress, but let's go back to the point I just made. We didn't need someone to act the part of the villain, such as where Billy Zane is great because there's something kind of villainous inside him.
Right.
Angie's a lovely person. The only way that Angie could portray a villain is if she acted it. There's the problem. You can't act it because we'll see it. And so Angie, it was an unfair ask to ask Angie to do a part that she did not have the chops, the qualifications, or really that's not who she is. And so it was wrong casting, but we didn't cast it because we thought to ourselves, this will be genius. This will be a fine. No, we cast it to keep an actor happy on another film set. And it turned out that Stallone had an ulterior motive. We were the consolation prize. He fully intended to break up with Angie, which he did 2/3 of the way through our movie. And he was going to say to her, which he did, hey, I got you a movie, didn't I?
And that is not how to make a movie. I gotta say that. Well, speaking of that, we're going to talk about with Alan Katz and was for a podcast. Listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's The Missing, The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David, 30 Exquisite Paintings, King David Psalms, and more. Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. And the Sensei Swing, Eric Diamond with his release, All of Me, new music coming soon, ericdiamondmusic.com. We'll be back in multi-talent Alan Katz after this time. We'll have the amazing multi-talent film, TV producer, writer, script editor, Alan Katz here on the Mike Wagner Show. And also, he's also got into podcasting, started a company whose mission is to make the world a better place through storytelling. And one of them is the how not to make a movie. I think we just explained that in Bordello of Blood and how not to make a podcast. Tell us more about that. But first of all, how'd you first get involved in podcasting?
Well, it was kind of crypt, kind of got
me like from the Tales, huh? Tales from the Crypt,
like Tales from the Crypt. The pandemic happened, and during the pandemic, there was a couple of Tales from the Crypt fans put together a podcast called Dads from the Crypt, and they, from 3 different parts of the country, what they were doing their podcast, they would review episodes of Tales from the Crypt and give parenting advice.
Oh, wow.
And one day, one of the dads, a guy named Jason Stein, reached out to me. He said, we're going to be reviewing one of the episodes you wrote. Would you like to sit in with us? And it sounded like fun, and I would get to give parenting advice too. And I've got 2 kids, so perfectly happy to provide, my 2 cents of parenting advice. And I said, yeah. And it was great fun. Really had a great time. A couple of weeks later, Jason reached out again and said, we're going to be reviewing Bordello of Blood. You want to sit in again? And I said, Jason, the story of the making of Bordello of Blood is not a half-hour conversation with you. It's a podcast unto itself. And I suddenly realized what it was that I had to do. And the first season of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast was subtitled The Making of Bordello of Blood. And it was really, I had been telling Bordello of Blood stories for 2 decades. Now, making Bordello of Blood was a terrible experience, but as a result, because it was such a negative, terrible experience, Gil Adler and I broke up. We stopped being friends. We stopped being creative partners. We didn't speak for 25 years.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Intense really a lot of animosity went on between us. And Bordello of Blood kind of set me onto a kind of a spiral, a downward spiral. I did 2 seasons on The Outer Limits, which was terrific, but I lost my way, and for 2 decades, I went into a deepening depression and a writer's block that I didn't even know I was in. And a lot of it stemmed from, what had happened on Bordello. And in part, I was not a strong producer on Bordello. I was making a movie I didn't want to make. And whereas if I'd been a stronger, more confident producer, I could have at least made that a tolerable experience for everybody.
So you didn't have your heart in the whole thing, and pretty much you didn't have your mindset. You just want to just get through it, get paid. It's like, come on, let's just get this over with. It's like, take the money and run and just, skim the water.
So, like I said, I went through this depression, and 3 days before Christmas 2016, I came within literal inches of killing myself. And I had known I was in a terrible death spiral, psychologically, mentally. Excuse me. And I'd been researching mood stabilizers because I grew up in the medical culture. My dad was a surgeon. And so I knew that with this kind of medication, uh, whatever the last pharmaceutical rep to walk through the office, he said, "Hey, you got any depressed patients? We make this. Try this out. See if it helps them." Well, with that kind of medication, it's going to take you 6 to 8 weeks usually to find out, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? It's a big enough crapshoot as it is. I didn't want to add that additional crapshoot element to it. I'd done my research, and so knowing that I was now quite capable of extreme self-harm, I went to my GP and I said, "Here's what I just did. Here's what I want to do. Will you prescribe this for me, please?" And he got out his smartphone and he said, "Okay, that makes sense." And he prescribed it. And I picked it up and I went home. I told my family what I was going to do. And I took the first dose and I got super lucky. Within 36 hours, I leveled. I felt
Wow.
the darkness doesn't go away, but suddenly it was in a box where it could no longer get at me. And because the darkness could no longer get at me, I could finally deal with the fact, the thing that had been driving all this. I've been keeping a secret from myself for 45 years. Something that I knew had happened to me when I was 14, utter denial that it had happened, but it happened. And I was sexually molested twice by the religious director at the synagogue where my family belonged outside of Baltimore. And it's not the first time is bad. It's the second time that really screwed me up, because the second time happened because I didn't say anything about the first time. So when you walk in the second time thinking, well, the first time never happened, and now the second time it starts to happen, well, you did this to yourself, man. You didn't say anything. And so from that day forward, I began to blame myself for every terrible thing that happened. It didn't matter. The logic didn't matter. And as my world got worse and worse and worse, I blamed myself. But now that I could confront what was really at the heart of it all, hardest weekend of my life, finally confronting that. But it's so true what they say. The truth will set you free.
Amen to that. Amen.
Absolutely set me free confronting this. And it was important not just for me to tell the story to me, but to tell the story to other people. Now, this suddenly, it occurred to me, gosh, if you can't tell your own story to you, really, if you can't tell your own story, can you really tell anyone else's? But once I could tell my story to me and tell my story to other people, because that was very important. Keeping it a secret was not doing me any good. Telling the story was vital. Once I could tell my story with balls to the wall honesty, I could tell anybody's story. And it was really, really important to me in telling the story of the making of Bordello of Blood in the first season of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast, that I tell the story with absolute balls to the wall honesty. And there were I wasn't looking to bring anyone else. I wasn't looking to blame anyone else. There were two people I wanted to take the task, and that was Dennis and that was Sly. Because Sly had no business doing to us what he did and doing. He did a terrible thing to Angie. Yeah, for that you deserve to be called out. But aside from that, there was only one person I wanted to take the task, and that was me, for being a weak producer. Yeah, doing something I didn't want to, but that was part of the important catharsis in telling the story. Now, in order to tell it balls to the wall honesty, I knew I was going to have to bring Gil in. And so I reached out to Gil, and for the first time in 25 years, we talked, and I said, look, there's a lot of stuff we haven't confronted about what happened to us emotionally, and really a lot of animosity. I said, I want to have all these conversations on mic and make them part of the podcast. And he said, okay. It was the craziest decision he ever made, but wow. Entertainment Weekly called the Clark Collis, who wrote the piece, after he listened to the podcast, the honesty. He thought, God, are you guys putting this on? And when he interviewed us, that was the question he wanted to know. Are you guys really this honest about your lives and with each other? And yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Now, doing the podcast, first of all, it renewed my relationship, my friendship with Gil, our creative relationship. We're working on a couple of things, but I suddenly found that telling a story in the medium of the podcast was enthralling. And the first season, those 10 episodes, and I didn't want to do a continual thing. I didn't want to do a weekly. I wanted to do a limited.
Right.
I wanted to tell the story and be done with it. And once that was done, the second season, I decided to do a second season, and that became a weekly unintentional. Unintentional. It became a weekly. I just put it on hiatus for a little bit because I've got so many other podcasts going. But doing the podcast, I fell in love with the medium. A friend of mine from school approached me with a project that he wanted to turn into a TV series, something that had actually happened to him. Now, here's the thing, and this is what I explained to him. The process of turning, all right, if I want to take an idea from my head and turn it into a TV series or a movie, but let's say a TV series, it's going to take me a year, 2 years or so, if I'm lucky, to get that script exactly where it needs to be so it's ready for the marketplace. All right. If it's a TV series, in addition to the first episode, I'm going to have.
Well, I think we're having some technical difficulties with Alan Katz and Mike White show. Alan, I think somebody from the Crypt kind of froze us a little bit. Maybe it was Chucky or something. So
I'm sorry, Chucky coming to get us, the Crypt Keeper, not getting his word in.
I think that's what happened too. So I guess a little bit about Chucky coming back.
Where did you lose me?
I think it was around talking about the crypt and everything like that. But of course, we can get to that later. But you also did 3 podcasts you mentioned as well too, like the Hall Closet, Sage Wellness Within, and The Donor, a DNA horror story. Tell us more about those.
I had a friend, and doing the How Not to Make a Movie podcast, I loved podcasting. And a friend approached me with a story, something that happened to him. He wanted to turn it into a movie or a TV series. I'll get to what happened to him. But to take an idea from your head, even if it's a true story, into a movie or a TV series, years to write the script. If you're going to do a TV series, you have to do what's called a Bible too. And that's, what happens the second episode and the third episode and the whole second season and the third season and all the characters. That's 60 to 70 pages.
Oh, wow.
That takes really a lot of time to write. And then just to get the executives to read the material, you have to create what's called a pitch deck, which is a electronic comic book version of the idea, just to get them to read it. And that's just the executive at the top of the meat grinder. And then if one of them says yes, and you go into the production meat grinder, there are thousands of assholes standing in your way. And at any point, any one of those assholes can kill your project dead just because you're an asshole. And it's years of work in the process. Now, to take that same idea and turn.
Okay.
And so long as I'm willing to do the work, all right, I got to find the audience. I gotta help the audience find it. But you know what? I'm in full control of the story. Well, with Hal's story, and Hal's story was so remarkable, there was no way you could turn it into a TV series.
Right.
In the mid-1980s, my friend Hal worked his way through medical school as an anonymous sperm donor.
And that's where the Donor DNA horror story comes from.
Yes, that's the Donor DNA horror story. Jump forward 27 years. He's a successful radiologist. He joined 23andMe curious about his health genes. It never occurred to him the ramifications of adding his DNA to a growing DNA database. That's what 23andMe is. He lost his donor anonymity. Suddenly, 7 total strangers found daddy.
What? Oh my goodness. Wow. Whew.
A sperm donor. Now, the 7th of these donor conceived kids, and these are not kids, these are adults. These are 25, 26-year-old people. One of the daughters, she brought a thing called genetic sexual attraction. to the table.
Okay.
The adoption community has known about genetic sexual attraction for a long time. People who are genetically related, brothers and sisters, for instance, but who are not raised together, when they meet each other later in life as adults, they have not had the proximity has more to do with the taboo than the actual blood relationship. There's research that says, yeah, actually, it's the taboo comes more from proximity than anything else. The term genetic sexual attraction was coined by a woman named Barbara Gagne, who gave up a son at 16 for adoption.
Oh, wow.
When she met him 25 years later, he was an adult. She fell head over heels in love with him. And he fell in love with her. She was ready to have sex. He was not. She described genetic sexual attraction as the most intense thing she'd ever felt in her entire life.
Ooh, wow.
Well, when this one of the daughters brought genetic sexual attraction to this table, well, Hal had he had been married for 20 years to a woman who brought a son from a previous marriage. He adopted him later as an adult, but he had never had the experience of raising a biological child of his own. Suddenly having 7 biological children. Now, he wasn't going to raise them, of course, and he was not going to be their father. He didn't father them, but he was quite ready to have a fatherly relationship with them. He had a lot of money. He was willing to cut them in on the inheritance because they were blood. But the genetic sexual attraction thrown in, this was like a hand grenade thrown into the circus tent. It destroyed everything. And
oh my gosh,
I describe the story as a DNA horror story. There very definitely is a monster. Well, I convinced Hal to let me tell his story as a podcast. And that became my first story podcast. It's 7 episodes, The Donor, a DNA horror story. And it's Hal's story. Really, it's what happens with this wonderful technology, which, we can know the truth about our DNA.
Right.
But there are ripple effects that people don't expect, like discovering you're not who you thought you were.
Or you'll know who your parents are. So, yeah.
So while I was researching Hal's story, and I got opening a door onto the donor-conceived community was fascinating. One of the donor-conceived people who agreed to give me background was named Donna Hall.
Okay.
Excuse me. And Donna had she learned at 40 that she was donor conceived, and that rocked her world.
Oh my.
When she told me the rest of her story, that blew my mind. I said, Donna, you're a podcast unto yourself. She said, I know. And she'd been trying to turn her story into a podcast, but even a great story has to be told the right way to be a great story. And Donna's story is amazing. She grew up in the 80s and 90s in a lower tier crime family outside of Philadelphia. The Halls weren't the Corleones from the Godfather movies, but they made national headlines just the same. Donna's mom, Phyllis, maybe the worst mom ever. She spent 6 months in prison for child endangerment. Donna's stepdad, John Hall, truly a criminal mastermind, was the Philadelphia Police Department's favorite snitch. He put more than 25 people behind bars based on bogus confessions he created to mitigate his own considerable legal jeopardy. Among the people he put away was his own stepson, Herb, who spent 18 months in jail awaiting trial for a murder he did not commit. John Hall put a man named Walter Ogrod on death row in Pennsylvania for 24 years for a murder Walter did not commit. When Pennsylvania finally realized its mistake, they gave Walter $9 million to try to make up for it. There are still people in prison. Though John Hall died 20 years ago, there's a man named David Dixon who's serving a life sentence in Philadelphia based on a bogus John Hall confession. Well, Donna's story about growing up in a lower tier crime family, literally every day, one or more of the adults was committing a crime. An amazing story. I had never heard anything remotely like it. Really, true crime like you've never heard it before. But what makes Donna's story really quite special, I think, is the fact that, first of all, she's an amazing storyteller. Not an ounce of self-pity. She's very, very funny. But her story is also a journey towards safety and, most importantly, empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's The Hall Closet. The first season of The Hall Closet is 8 episodes of true crime like you've never heard it before. Really told from the inside, true crime told from the inside at a very granular level. It is breathtaking, breathtaking stuff. I found as I was in the middle of doing Hal's story that I had found I'd become the thing I always wanted to be when I grew up, which is a podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
I love storytelling in this medium. It's so intimate. People take our voices and our stories and they listen usually with earbuds or headphones, or even in your car is just a giant sound pod. And they take our stories and our voices and they put them into their most intimate space between their ears inside their heads.
Okay.
And storytelling from there, I find so exciting. A great honor comes with a lot of responsibility. And I decided I didn't, movies and TV, it's too much hard work to tell a story. Now, part of my aim, though, with my little company, Costard and Touchstone Productions, and you can find more about us at costardandtouchstone.com. Our mission is to make the world a better place through storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And podcasting is our medium of choice. I decided that as I set out, at this point I've got 4 new podcasts coming over the course of the summer that I'm working with 4 different journalists on.
Okay.
I've got I'm doing a celebrity podcast with a man named Sean Cassidy.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Partridge Family.
No.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
A different Sean Cassidy. This is, you remember Ted Cassidy, who played Lurch?
Yes, I remember.
He is Ted Cassidy's son. And the podcast is called Son of Lurch.
Oh, my gosh.
And that one is about growing up the son of Lurch, Ted Cassidy's son, growing up in LA in the 60s and 70s. He also spent a lot of time hanging out with the Grateful Dead, who were his pals.
Oh my gosh, that's something.
It's so working on a podcast with him. There are, by the end of this year, Costard and Touchstone Productions will have about a dozen different podcasts out in the world.
Okay. And what's their website again?
costardandtouchstone.com. That's COSTARDAND Touchstone, TOUCHSTONE.com.
And where can I find your works at?
Costardandtouchstone.com will link you to everything I'm doing.
All right. Well, certainly check that out. We're the amazing multi-talent Alan Katz here on the Mike Wagner Show with all kinds of podcasts, movies, everything else. And besides what you talked about for 2025 coming up, what else you got going on in play for 2025?
Podcasts, and more podcasts. I said over the summer, I'm working with 4 different journalists. After the last election, legacy journalism, which was on the way to the graveyard, kind of went the rest of the way there. And a lot of legacy journalists left the business, were forced out because there's just not, certainly print journalism is almost dead. And so there are a lot of very talented journalists who have stories to tell. Podcasting is the perfect place for them because they can find their audience and tell their stories. There's no corporate overlord telling them what they can or cannot tell in terms of their stories or how even to tell them.
Right.
It's because of that direct relationship with the audience, that I think is going to be quite liberating for them. So there are 4 different journalists who I've I'm now working with on 4 different journalistic podcasts, including Manila Chan was a journalist for 25 years. She's always wanted to tell the story. She's Lao American. She's always wanted to tell the story of the secret war.
Okay.
The most bombed country in the history of the world is Laos.
Vietnam.
No, Laos is Laos. We bombed Laos every day for 9 years, literally every single day. During the Vietnam War, we bombed Laos, although we weren't supposed to. We bombed it in secret because the North Vietnamese ran the Ho Chi Minh Trail through Laos. The Ho Chi Minh Trail wasn't a trail, it was a supply network, and it ran through Laos. And so they weren't supposed to do that. And so we bombed it, which we weren't supposed to do. Now, it's unfortunate for the Lao people. To this day, a third of the country is uninhabitable because there's so much unexploded American ordnance still sitting on the ground there.
Oh,
we
wow.
dumped an awful lot of ordnance there after the bombing run was done. They would dump the ordnance in Laos because they didn't want to take it back with them and risk getting shot down with it.
Mm-hmm.
What we did to Laos in the secret war was unconscionable. Manila has wanted to tell this story her entire journalistic career, but couldn't get anyone interested. And so I approached her. I said, let's do this as a podcast. And so it's called A Secret War because it's about Manila's war to tell the story of the secret war as well.
All right. So we'll certainly check that out here with Alan Katz. Who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
Among the people that is most important to me is Bob Zemeckis, one of my executive producers on Tales from the Crypt. Everything I know about the art of collaboration, of collaborating with people, I learned from Bob. How to get the very best out of everyone you work with. There are ways to do it, and he's not just a genius movie maker. He is a genius at getting the very best out of everyone he works with.
Okay. That's certainly amazing. What's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
The truth will set you free.
You got that right. I think you said it perfect right there, Alan. We're here with the amazing Alan Katz of Thou Shalt Not, How Not to Make a Movie, all kinds on the Mike Wagner Show. Alan, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Great stories to share. Looking forward to having soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Laugh, have you back. And what's your website? How do people contact you? And where can people check out your works?
The best place right now, there are all the different podcasts which are available wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, but at costardandtouchstone.com. That's the ground zero for what we're doing and all the things that are coming up.
And we'll certainly check that out. Once again, Alan, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to having soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Live, have you back. We wish you all best. And Alan, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Mike.